Well, we have an extraordinary gathering here on stage. Thinking about the words that Nate left us with about changing the initial conditions of the future, you can't really think about that without thinking about our education system and the ways that we're helping students, our young people, the next generation, to be supported in taking up the extraordinary challenges that they face in this time of rapid change and more. So I'm not going to do more than introduce my friend and mentor, Peter Senge. Peter is well known to many of you as one of the founders of the Society for Organizational Learning, the author of The Fifth Discipline, which is widely cited as one of the fundamental texts about management and strategy of the last 50 years. That was not that long ago. But Peter's extraordinary dedication to systems change has brought him to British Columbia. I'll let him describe that work with his partners and associates here. Peter, I'm going to turn this over to you at this point. So please welcome this wonderful panel and Peter Senge.
Thank you, Stephen. It is really a pleasure to be here in Victoria. I'm just introduce everybody and then we'll kind of get started. There's a kind of a sequence, probably more or less reversed order of what we're seated here, but you'll see how we want to unfold this as we go. Immediately on my left is Jennifer McCrea from the ministry. I never get your title right. I should read it up here. Associate Deputy Minister. Jennifer's been a key leader in this work for almost a decade now, along with the person sitting next to her, Sylvia Russell, who I first got to know as superintendent of one of the larger school districts in the province, Maple Ridge Pitt Meadows. And then on the duplex there, we tried to figure out who to put on that bench. And obviously it was the students. I understand there's one thing that's inaccurate. So Nishaya and Keegan. Nishaya is not an 11th grade student. She's a graduate. She's now in college. And I suspect Keegan, 11th grade is correct for you, right? Are you starting 11th grade now? Yes, okay, great. And then next to Keegan is Meryl. Yes, right order. Mira Haida, one of the knowledge holders, and I guess about to be elder in the Nisga'a Nation. And next to Meryl is dear friend Charity Nuxmox, who's the high school principal. So this session, I think, will flow very easily from the last one. So after the kind of laying out of the challenges, dilemmas, and kind of fundamental requirements moving forward, hopefully we'll be kind of embodying the best we can and certainly illustrating what that looks like. So starting about a decade ago, building on a lot of wonderful work that had been occurring in the province of British Columbia for several decades prior. This is a world-leading province in the domain of social emotional learning, recognized around the world for that. And as far as I know, the only place in the world that tracks the well-being of children, all children, in a population database from birth now. So there's no one in the world who can actually answer the question, how are the kids doing, the way BC can. And by the way, I've checked in Singapore. Not even Singapore can do it. And of course, that's a wonderful accomplishment, and it's very sobering because you can see that the children are actually not doing very well, despite the extraordinary efforts of the whole community, from pediatricians on through secondary educators, to actually work together better than probably people do any place in the world to tend to the well-being of children. To me, it's a poignant kind of data point. I'm not a big fan of data. I mean, having been around places like MIT my whole life, thinking, okay, great, data. But it is useful, of course, to be grounded. And there's an old saying in traditional Chinese culture that the mark of every golden age is that children are the most important members of society. and teaching the most revered profession. By that standard, we don't do too well. But more to the point of where the last session brought us, okay, great. We know the depth, breadth, and there should be a good single English word for the daunting nature of our problems. But in the end, this is not about grand designs and big ideas rolled out through provinces and countries. It's about step by step by step moving into a different way of being. So what we'll be primarily doing during this session is kind of letting you all kind of look over the shoulder of a wonderful group of educators from the ministry to one particular community, really trying to step together in a different direction. One of the things that we were trying to do in putting this group together is illustrate the range of leadership, types of leadership. The word leadership, I've often thought, well, if we could just get rid of this word. It's so entwined with hierarchy and power, and the leaders are, you all know. And actually, it's a problem around the world. It transcends all the modern cultural contexts. This profound confusion with the leaders are the people at the top, whatever top you're talking about. Whereas the root of the English verb to lead literally means, you want to say it again? It literally means to step ahead. It has an Indo-European root, typically written lithe, and it literally means to step across the threshold. So in that sense, it's not about position at all. If you're in a position of authority, obviously your ability to step ahead really matters because you affect a lot of people. But if you're not in a position of authority, it doesn't mean that you're not a leader. The only organization, by the way, that I've ever worked with in depth that understood that, ironically, is the U.S. Army. We had a 10-year partnership with and I'm going to tell you, the military, the good military organization, they have a saying in the U.S. Army, your first day as a leader is your first day on the job. They take it very seriously. They think a lot about the difference between leadership at the very front levels to all the way up to generals. So leadership and hierarchy are not the same. It's very important to understand that. Until you start to understand that, you can't possibly have a ground for appreciating the types of change processes that are really possible, led by people in all kinds of different positions of authority. One of the reasons it's very important to end this morning flow with a session that had, sitting in the middle, two of the younger leaders in the Nisga'a Nation. The kids are the most important leaders for many of the most important issues. I can't tell you how many sustainability, regenerative economics, blah, blah, blah conferences I've been at, and there are no young people, zero. Like, what's wrong with this picture? So the basic flow today is I'm going to say just a few more comments just to contextualize, and then we'll go right into the experience of the people in the Nisga'a Nation. Now, I say that and pause because I'm suspecting there's a few people here like me as someone, a citizen of the United States, aren't really aware. I don't think this is much the case in Canada, but certainly for the people from outside Canada, that it is possible legally in this country to recover full legal autonomy for an Indigenous community. It's a complex legal process. The Nisga'a are referred to as the Nisga'a Nation because you are a nation. The nation of Canada has to, in some ways, relate to the Nisga'a Nation as they would relate to other nations outside. It was actually a stunning piece of work that went on through the 1980s by a team of lawyers who basically redesigned those parts of the Canadian Constitution. Oh, by the way, those lawyers were all Indigenous lawyers. I've happened to know quite a few of them. It is one of the more significant aspects of systems change. Now, what does it illustrate about systems change? It illustrates kind of what we all know. The artifacts matter, the laws, the policies, in an organizational setting, the metrics, the hierarchy, how we're organized. Those are aspects of the system. They're in some ways, the easier aspects of the system. I don't know if people like James Sagash Henderson and Leroy Littlebear, who were part of that legal team, did the work, would agree, but I think they would. they could not have done this if there wasn't a sentiment, or they could not have accomplished this redesign of the Canadian Constitution if there wasn't a rising sentiment in the country that something is really wrong. As Vanessa often says, we go on and on and on about human rights, but in many ways, all the real conversations start by acknowledging human wrongs. Real systems change always involves the tangible, like the laws, the legal procedures that enable the possibility of recovering full sovereignty for an indigenous country, an indigenous nation, and the mental models, the mindsets, the attitudes, the beliefs, the convictions, the assumptions, the kind of subtler aspects of what makes a social system a social system. It is, in the end, comprised of humans. And all that the humans bring in terms of their history, their beliefs, their convictions, their aspirations, and of course, in many cases, most importantly, their tacit assumptions. I remember asking Leroy and Sagesh when I learned that story 20, 25 years ago, could that be done in the United States? Could anything like what you accomplished in Canada be done in the United States? They said no. The genocide was too far past, too successful. There's not enough to build on, and there's no shared sentiment, or at least sufficiently shared sentiment, that something's really wrong here. So real systems change is always an inside job. Not only an inside job, but without really paying attention to that inner dimensions, nothing much really happens. So we had that kind of as a theme we wanted to weave throughout today. And I'm going to just pose a couple of questions. As Stephen said, these sessions seem to work best when we pose a couple of questions that everybody can relate to. In what ways is the inner work part of your work in whatever ways you're involved in systems change? In what ways is it not? Could be, but still yet obscured. The story or the example I just gave of why the US Constitution could not have been redesigned like the Canadian points to an absence of sense of real shared responsibility for wrongs. It's an example of a blind spot, you might say, or certainly a lack of a shared mental model that we really do have to change. So in that sense, system change is always an inside job. And not only an inside job. In the end, changing those laws and those legal procedures was really important. It's just that you can never bring about significant changes in what we often call the artifacts of the system, the tangible, manifest aspects of a system, without a critical mass of understanding at the subtle, personal, interpersonal, shared, cultural, whatever words you want to use there, the inner work. So that's the kind of core question we want to explore. In what ways is this entwined inner-outer dance at the heart of any real change, deep, long-term change? And why is it hard? What keeps us from seeing that? I doubt that little of what I've just said would strike many people as terribly controversial. We have a phrase in English, I suspect you have the same problem here in Canada, in the English-speaking Canada, of the, quote, soft stuff, right? I see a few nods. It's a horrible phrase, because it's really, that's the hard stuff, right? The tangible artifacts, in the end, you do need new metrics, and you get enough people together and you sort out new metrics, or you change the organization's formal structure. It's not easy, but yeah. But me, I'm part of what needs to change. We, how we are together, is part of what really needs to change. There's always three fundamental levels of systemness or independence in any kind of social world. This system, if I were to translate literally the Chinese mind-heart-body system, this thing I call a self. This thing we call a group or a family or a school. the social reality, and then all the larger systems. Gregory Kahete, who's did a brilliant synthesis of tribals, traditions of education and development, said there's always three fundamental elements. At least he said in every tribal system he ever studied. He's a Tewa Indian, so he's from what today would be called New Mexico in the Southwest. Land, individuation, this system, community, this system, and land, which stands for the living presence of all that's beyond we humans, and without which we humans really don't do too well. So, where's the inside job in all this? So, here's the way we're going to start. I'm going to just quickly ask each of them to introduce themselves, but we're going to go in an order where we're going to actually start with the Nisga'a people, because we want to kind of make the centerpiece of this, kind of looking over our shoulders, getting a sense of what's their journey been like in their process of using what we often call now the compassionate systems, tools, methods, framework, which is kind of a simple way to point at a whole bunch of tools and methods for deep, long-term, individual, collective change. And then we'll loop back at the end to the role of formal leadership, like Sylvia's experience as a district superintendent and coach and mentor of many other district superintendents here in the province, and Jen's as a senior level of the ministry. All these levels of authority really matter. That's the whole point of the composition here. So maybe just go down really quickly and just introduce yourself so people, and we've tried to sit so you can kind of more or less keep track.
Good morning, Jennifer McCrea. I am pleased to be on the lands of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Songhees and Cossapsan First Nations and the Wasanich people on whose lands I was born, raised, and continue to live today and work. I am a senior leader in the BC provincial government with the Ministry of Education and Childcare.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here with this team of students and very special adults from the Nisga'a School District and the Nisga'a Nation. I hope that Jen and I have very little to say today because these are incredibly interesting people who bring real richness to the work that we're trying to do in BC around compassionate systems and change in the public education and to some degree private education system in terms of how are we interacting with each other and the relational power that needs to exist in schools to make our system so much better. And I'm very optimistic about this and very inspired by this group of people and others that I've met in Nisga'a over the last several months.
I'm a Heath so good morning, everybody. Nishaya swa ksim gwi chames guam niska. Gilach damix will wit gwi, gilach damix will jugai. My name is Nishaya. My Nishka name is Gwi chames, meaning always shining, and I grew up in Nishaya and I reside in Nishaya.
Keegan, what Lusky eat will skid on will retweet. I get like that with switch guy. My name's Keegan Kervel. I'm in grade 11 now. I play basketball. I'm from Nishaya, British Columbia, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
Hiluk as Nisga'a Hadal what Wam Nisga'a Merle Morvan Wam Amxiwa. I am from Wilps Wisnichbilk of the Gis'as tribe, and I live and work on Nisga'a territory in the Nisga'a community of Gitlacht Amidst.
Amasa asnisa. Good day to everyone. Skok mit dem Moldoix gam ligi hathach amasat gun. Gam guith wilt. We just want to first thank the Creator for such a beautiful day and for bringing us together. What a blessing. Noch smalks lwak simlach skik ni wilp squeak mat will wit quit. Doik sitness up to the song keys and Esquimalt for allowing us the opportunity to share our way of being as we visit and share on your territory. My Nisga'a name is Nuxmox. Mox means the white caps on the water. Nux means mother of. I am from Wilpsqueak Mount and I am from the Eagle clan. Doik sitness up.
Thank you. So we're going to start off by spending some time just really listening to what the journey has been like for our 4 guests from the Nisga'a Nation. And I think we're going to start off with Merle.
Hiluk again. It is my great honor to be here on the Songhees territory and in the presence of such great leadership, both here on the panel and here at the conference. I bring with me the wisdom of my late father, Watlan Samagit Mali, the late Joseph Grandison. Watlan Sigidum Nak Weetix Naks, the late Pauline Grandison, and that of my Nisga'a ancestors who've gone to what we call the happy hunting grounds. I have been working alongside this group for probably the last couple of years. I've attended Foundations for Systems Change with Peter. I'd like to acknowledge Charity for tapping me to be in this role. I never imagined that I would ever be in such a position as I am today. I'm kind of grateful for the lights that are shining in my eyes because I can't see all of you and it makes me a little less nervous. The systems change approach has really changed the way that I approach my life in general. It's changed the way I approach my job and the way that I raised my 18-year-old grandson. And my grandson has been the reason that I work for change within the education system. I have dealt with many administrations at the school and pushed for change specifically to the way that the students learn, because not all of them are book learners. Some of them, like me, are hands-on learners. And I commented to Charity at our last gathering in May or late April that the way the school is run is very different from the way it was run 40 years ago when I was in high school. The students have a voice now, and that is very refreshing to see. And to see 2 youth up here speaking to you like they're speaking to their mom and dad is very impressive. And I'm so proud of Keegan and Nishaya for their strength to be able to do this. As a 17-year-old, I never would have been able to sit up here and speak to you as I am today. Peter indicated that I'm almost an elder. I'll be 60 years old in October. My name tag bumped me up to an elder. And that's a badge that I wear with pride, and I carry myself with the strength of my ancestors. Um, and this work would not be possible if I didn't take care of myself first. And before we came out here, we had a prayer in the foyer just to get ourselves grounded, as understandably there was some nervousness and anxiety, which is to be understood. So we joined hands and said a prayer to ground ourselves and ask for good energy to surround us as we shared our words with you today. Taking care of self is very important in any aspect of your work or your life in general. And the way that I take care of myself is to go and have a quiet time by myself so I can keep myself grounded and picture a string through my body that is being pulled taut so that I can stand straight and speak with confidence. And it's something that I share indirectly with our youth representatives about how to speak in public. And I practice that a lot when, as a community, we present to a grieving family and we present a song. And I look up at the rafters in the church, and that's where I want my voice to go. And I think about my ancestors who've passed on, and I want them to hear me in heaven as well. So I try to speak with a strong enough voice that they can hear me. Just bear with me, I've got my notes on my phone here. I've been working with the Nisga'a language and culture for probably about the last 30 years. And I've implemented that into my work with systems change with Peter and Mena and charity. And one of the foundations of our Nisga'a ways of being is Klachasa'ansk, which means respect. And if we don't have respect of self, we cannot respect anyone else. So I remind myself of that every day. And compassionate systems in compassion in the Nisga'a language is qa'im qat. And qat is your heart. And it's something that I practice in my daily life. For example, I inherited my late mom's smokehouse. And so what I've started doing is I help members of the community who don't have access to a smokehouse to get them their winter supply of fish for their freezers or their jars or what have you. And I ask for nothing in return other than blessings for my freezer to always be full. That is something my mom role model to us as children. And it's why I continue to do that in her honor. I have some steelhead in the freezer at home that I was hoping to get long before I left home on Wednesday last week, but I didn't get them until Tuesday. So now they're in the freezer and I'm going to be in the smokehouse when I get home tomorrow. It is It has been quite the journey working with Jennifer, Peter, and Sylvia, and I feel so embraced by this group. There's a lot more of us, but I feel like they've become like my extended family when I'm away from home. And it's really comforting to have them here with me and with all of us to offer us support. And there was talk of energy, and energy to me, we are all made up of energy. And if you shake someone's hand and you feel that vibration, that's an exchange of energy. And we were out whale watching yesterday with our youth and Ms. Peel here. And the excitement when we seen the whales was just phenomenal, like the screams, and it was so exciting. And to be able to experience that with a group of youth was, to me, was a blessing. And I am so grateful for all the blessings that come into my life. And again, it's such an honor to be here, and I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Nishaya and Keegan, want to say a few words about what the journey's been like for you?
I am an alumni of Nisga'a Secondary School, and um, being transparent, my high school experience was much better than like the middle school um, experience, because we had one set schedule and every day was kind of repetitive. And in my high school, we started a rotation schedule, and that happened because we communicated that to Miss Peel, and it was also really helpful during like online schooling days. And we also started these family meetings so we could communicate other questions and topics on areas we should change, what we should keep. And yeah, that was really exciting to see the engagement. And the rotation schedule is actually the biggest factor that made my high school career so enjoyable. And also the exploration days on Wednesday, because every day was just different. And basically these meetings consisted of like questions and discussions on how our school is structured. And after attending the workshop, Compassionate Systems, we were inspired and we brought the workshop to our community for our children, and the engagement was amazing to see. Also, I want to talk about how we applied this workshop to our school within our academics. I had a social justice class that I took that I had to take for a grad requirement, and being transparent, I didn't think I'd like it, but it was genuinely the best class I've ever taken. It was like compassionate systems applied into an academic course. I'll explain a bit more into that. We took the family meetings as an opportunity to engage in and discuss opportunities like on what we should consider doing in the school. And we created surveys and we handed those out. We also had a mini workshop, with 12 breakout groups. And that actually pushed us to discuss and engage with our peers, because that doesn't really happen often. And it was amazing to see the participation. And after all that amazing work, we had the opportunity to speak in the chambers of Nisga'a government. And we were giving very rewarding feedback on our work and dedication by our own Madam President Eva Clayton. The class actually had passion for our work, and it wasn't just a grad requirement. But one thing I would want to continue to see for years is our unity, especially through our language preservation from pre-K to high school and beyond. Last semester, a couple of my fellow students and we asked Ms. Peel if we could have Nisga'a language class again. And we received the news that next semester we would be enrolled in Wilkos Nisga'a Institute, a university level class focusing on Nisga'a language. And it was definitely university level. It was very difficult, but we all passed. There was 7 of us. We all passed with very high marks. And we were so lucky to get that knowledge shared with us in high school, especially at a university level. A connection that I made between our culture and compassionate systems awareness is that they're both rooted with compassion. And I know these changes in our school made such an impact, and especially through our culture. And Compassionate Systems has introduced me to so many amazing people and has taught me to have change, you have to build community. Thank you for listening to me.
Talk a bit about how I use systems awareness with basketball and at home in my daily life. It's like when you take basketball, you think about high level situations, like say you're in fourth quarter and you need to win the game and everyone's stressed out. I'm sorry. And I'd go back to like using different strategies in my mind to like calm myself down. And when I do that, it gets so much easier to play the game and feels like you can make a comeback against anyone. And when I'm using it at home and just out and about, it's like taking, give me a minute. It's like taking what you've experienced into learning something new, but I don't know, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I think that's about it for me.
Charity, so you've been part of this journey for a long time. I'm kind of curious, your perspective as a principal, what has kind of evolved in the way you think about your job?
Yeah, I guess when I was sharing that when I became vice principal and then principal, it wasn't ever really my intent to become an administrator. I was really happy being a teacher, happy being in the classroom. And one of the reasons that I did step forward and take a step is because of the children. The children were encouraging me with curious questions about why is school this way and why are we seen this way? Why are we treated this way by those that are in leadership positions? And so because of those curious questions and because of that encouragement from children, I took a step and found myself in a space where I knew there were things missing. And I knew from my own experience, I knew from my own life and my own experience in the school, because I'm also an alumni, along with Nishaya, from our school, that there were missing pieces. The voices of the children definitely were missing, because that's what they were telling me already. And as I began my engagement with the work on myself and the work for myself, because as Merle said, it's about inner work, and it is about how do I show up. I knew the other missing piece was our elders, our knowledge keepers, our nation, our community. And it's coming up on 4 years that we've been gathering with elders, knowledge keepers, and myself, really to allow for an opportunity to have a conversation, to understand really truly what is happening at our school. And on our very first day together, elders, knowledge keepers, and myself, I had to facilitate some trust and some very hard ways of communicating. And I had to allow for truth to come forward, for everybody to just speak their truth on what they thought about the school, what they thought the school was doing, what they thought the school wasn't doing, and then to come to some understanding together so that we would be able to move forward with where do we want to be? What is our aspiration? How can we create that together? And it's amazing to me that we continue to come together, and our group is a group that is alive and living. And some people can make it sometimes, some people can make it other times, and we continue on. And it's the encouragement piece, encouragement not just for me, but the work that we're doing together. It's a collective encouragement. It's encouragement for themselves. And after that very first day, the elders and knowledge keepers said, "Thank you for opening the door." I think there was always an assumption that the door was open and that our elders and knowledge keepers were just not coming in. And so we had to create the space. And then I introduced them to the children so that the kids could tell the truth too. And so we continued on this and are continuing together. And a big piece of my work is about supporting the adults, supporting the teachers, the staff, because they're working with the kids every day, all day. And I need to also hear them. I need to know what they need as far as supports and what they need in order to thrive with the children. And so I introduced a time and space which I think turns out to be really for me and our elementary kids. We have about 98 elementary students. And so I get to spend 40 minutes every week with them, dancing and singing in our own language. And their teachers have the opportunity to collaborate and meet together so that they can offer them some experiential opportunities in the afternoon that allow our children out onto our land to learn about our culture, our history, and our ways by being out on our own territory. And that came from the secondary school as well, to offer some experiential, some outdoor learning, and ensuring that our kids are connected to our land, our history, our people. And that's where our family time came in. Some people call it flex time. We call it family time because we're a family. When I first became vice principal, most schools call it an assembly, and an assembly is much like this, where someone stands in the front and talks at you and then says, go away, do what I said, and I'll talk to you in 4 years, I guess is what the other panel said. But basically, right, I'll talk to you again in a while. Not check in with you, but I'll talk to you again. And so I called a family meeting, and everyone, the kids and the adults, were, what is she doing? She's always doing something, but what is she doing now? And so I said, this is a family meeting because we are a family. And I'm a community member. I'm a member of the Nisga'a Nation. And so at first, I will make a connection with everyone. How am I connected to every single one of you? I'm Laxgeek. My dad was Ganeta. And so the Ganeta, they are my Wilk Selects. They're in charge of taking care of me and making sure, checking in with me, making sure that I have what I need. And that goes, even if they're children, that's still their role and responsibility. They're learning, right, over time. And then my dad's dad was Lakibu, and so Lakibu were in charge of taking care of my dad, and that's how he learned how to be a good person who is a good paternal relative. And my mom was originally from Cape Mudge, the Kwakwakiwak, and her original tribe before she was adopted into Laxgeek was Gisgast. And so I always say I have a special place for the Gisgast because that's where my mom's family was from. And so creating those connections and understandings, all of us need to know who our paternal relatives are. And so we're pretty unapologetic about, and I think it's part of my boldness, in living our culture in our school too, bringing it in every single way we can, using our language as much as we can. I had the opportunity to work with the grade 8s in February for 4 days. And as we were learning about our culture and our identity as Nisga'a, they kept saying, I don't know if you've heard 13-year-olds, but they constantly say, wait, what? Wait, what? They say it to each other and they say it to the adults a lot. And I always say to the kids, nope, say that in Nisga'a. And so I told the grade 8s, they're one of our smallest cohorts we've ever had, but I said to them, I'm going to buy you t-shirts that say that in Nisga'a, because we learned how to say it. And so they didn't believe me because they're new to our school. They didn't believe me I was going to get them t-shirts, and I got them t-shirts. So everybody's walking around with these shirts that say "Yacha wina go," and so. And it is being unapologetic and using our language as best we can. And another example of that circle of communication, the elders, when I was asking them about our ceremony, when we're passing the Gatam Siwilyansk, the power and authority from the community to the leadership within the school, you know, how better can we strengthen that? And so what came out of that was a blanketing ceremony, because that's what we do. And how about we also cleanse our school, because we hadn't cleansed it in a really long time. And it's just, I guess, an ongoing and constant communication between myself, the adults, the kids, the elders, and the knowledge keepers, and trying to make sure that, you know, we consistently are listening to each other, and getting a sense of, is what we're doing making a difference for kids? And if you listened to our children, it's amazing. Like, I almost cried how many times while Nishaya was talking and Keegan was talking and Merle was talking, because it's come to a place where it's what we do, it's who we are. And that's amazing. Like, we took away bells. I was talking with Keegan, our boss, we call them the hashtag Boston Five because they were the 5 kids that I took to Boston. And I was talking to them about after one of the sessions we were in, I said, do you guys remember bells at school? And then I think Nishaya said, yeah, it had this really weird, and I said, yeah, I went boo, boo, like really loud. And so, and I was telling them, like, in one year, I think there were probably about 10 or 12 bells. And it was so frustrating as an adult. I was like, okay, I'm not sure how many people's jobs where the bell tells them to start and to stop and go for a break and then come off the break, and right? Like, and so I said, I'm not sure, like, I don't know if this is good for kids. And so we don't have bells. We haven't had bells for a really long time. I think in Keegan's career at our school, I don't think he's heard a bell. Our elementary students, they don't also have one of those old school bells anymore. We use a drum, and our kids are welcome to hit the drum and call everybody in. And so it's just, how do we look for those ways and constantly support people for what is it that they need, and how are we balancing and welcoming our new family members? Because as life goes, some of our family members leave, some come back, new ones come in, and as we've been taught over time, our previous leadership, and I think that's something that Merle also highlighted, was that tremendously strong and powerful voice and force of our ancestors, the ones that went before us, to constantly remind us our job. Our job is to ensure, first of all, paramount, that our kids are proud of who they are and where they come from as Nisga'a. And secondly, they are to have a comparable education to anywhere else in this province. And I would argue that currently, I think our kids are getting a better education than anywhere else in this province.
Thank you. The work going on in Nisga'a is not in any way unique. We wanted to kind of have one context to really step into deeply, but there are many like this. There are about 50 people now in the province, educators like Charity, who've gone through a year-long certification program, and many districts are kind of advancing in their own way, in their own ways that are coherent with their communities and their kids. Sylvia and Jen are kind of examples of the more senior leadership that's been helping set the stage for all this and supporting it. So maybe we'll kind of close for just hearing a few words from you about, so what's the journey been like for you, kind of rethinking what it means to be a superintendent of a big district or a senior person in the ministry?
I'm really pleased to be here and have you hear this story, because I think it's so, we are so ready for change in so many aspects of our society. And Peter mentioned the incredible database that we have out of Help UBC. Our 5-year-olds in this province are not doing very well. And the state of their social and emotional wellness is in decline. And I actually think this is a reversible situation, even though as a superintendent, I work super hard to think about those kids every day of the time that I spent in that job, along with the grade 4s who should be human Velcro. And 20% of our grade 4s tell us that there is no one in their school that cares about them or is important to them who is an adult. And so you listen to this story and you lay that data on top of it, and you begin to see why I think you would understand why I, as a superintendent, would think it was incredibly important to do that work internally with our adults who are expressing huge fatigue and anxiety and stress about the work that they're doing in schools, and children who are also expressing that worry and stress through these measures coming out of UBC. And so how do you change that? And what do you do to actually, as a system, a school system, as a provincial system, do things to make it so that children are not feeling that level of stress, so that parents are embraced as they come in our doors? And we have a lot of really fine people working in our schools, but it's the bringing together of this kind of collective sense of we have to be well within ourselves. We have to be centered. We have to be, Stuart Shanker said a number of years ago to all of us in the province that children have to be calm, alert, and ready to learn. Those words have always stuck with me. We have to create conditions like that in our schools for both our adults and our families and our children. So for me, this was kind of a daily thing that I would think about, like, how is it that 20% of our grade 4s are saying that? Why is it? Are we talking about that? Are we thinking about what are the skill sets that maybe we haven't uncovered in the school system yet that are going to lead to a healthier set of outcomes for all of us and a calmer, gentler, more connected school setting? And it's the reason why I thought it was really important to bring this group of very interesting people to this conference, because they can describe what those conditions look like. And they use in the school setting words like love and family and ancestors and spirituality. We've been allergic to those words. As a matter of fact, you know, people often feel like they could get disciplined for those words being used. And I remember being really startled one time when a secondary principal, who is now a fabulous superintendent in the province, said to his graduating class, "I love you." He'd opened the school with this class, and it was a heartfelt, true expression of how he had connected with this group of kids and the staff and the people that were in the auditorium that he was speaking to. And we have to stop, slow it down. People spoke about that a little bit today. We're so in a hurry to improve results. Results don't improve in schools until we actually know who the kids are. We put the right adults in front of them. We break apart structures that are just there because they're just there, like bells ringing, and we do some things differently. And I think Peter and Meta, through this compassionate systems awareness, have shown us some of the pieces that we need to put together to be thinking more deeply about that experience that we all have lived through of going to school, and what we can do to make it more responsive to the times that we actually live in today.
I would add to Sylvia's comments a huge thank you to the Nisga'a for being so generous with your teachings today. Thank you. From a government lens, we are really good at making committees and studying things and delaying things. And quite honestly, we use the data from HELP telling us our kids were not doing well. We use the data of the adults who were not doing well. The attendance was low. It was costing the system. The constant change in the classroom with teachers on call coming in. And we had an opportunity in front of us. And it was my colleague, Danielle Carter-Sullivan, who's here with us today. And we have a mental health in school strategy for the province. It's not a program, it's a strategy. And it says we have to start taking care of the adults who take care of our kids. And when we did it, and we had the data in front of us, we said, we'll just write compassionate systems and leadership and self and classrooms and the educators into the plan. It wasn't a 4-year study. It went to cabinet, it got approved, and it's alive and well in our province today. Some of the things as we journeyed into this work is, if we're truly doing systems change, it can't be two of us from government going down to MIT to do this fancy training and come back and tell the province what to do. Government's really good at that. So what we did is we said, we're taking the system. We took Sylvia, we took the principals with us. What we didn't do was take the kids, and yet what we say is every single thing we do in education and childcare is centered on kids and families. We got it wrong. And Nisga'a got it right. Just two other quick points, Peter, I really want to make. Compassionate systems leadership and reconciliation is not in conflict. It's an and. This work must be led by First Nations in our province if districts are entering into the work, and how they do it in a good way. And it is grounded in what we know in Indigenous ways of knowing and being, is how to show up as true, authentic humans in a compassionate way in a system that we love.
Thank you. By the way, we'll all be together this afternoon in one of the workshops, so we're kind of trying to just keep focused here on the story and the journey, and not the tools and methods. I'm an engineer by training. None of this happens just because it's a good idea. There are a lot of practices, and this work has really been integrated by at all levels, from the ministry to the districts to individual communities like Nisga'a. Since we're just about out of time, I'm just kind of curious to invite Keegan and Isha particularly. So you're sitting here listening to adults really do our best to reflect on the plight, the difficulties we face. They're not difficulties that the Nisga'a face, they're difficulties that humans face. We have a way of living that doesn't seem to work too well. It produces a lot of wealth for a few people and not a lot of the opposite for a lot of people. It's obviously doing immense damage to the larger living systems, nature, which we all depend upon. I'm just kind of curious, as you've been sitting here taking all this in, which I'm sure doesn't surprise you at all. Do you have any final kind of words or suggestions to we adults as to what you think maybe would help us do it better? It's a big question. Take it anywhere you want.
One of the biggest things that helped the students was Miss Peel just having an open mind and an open heart. So I think that's like my answer for you.
So what would the basketball have to say to us?
I really don't know what to say.
I understand.
I think just like when Nishaya said, having Miss Peel having an open heart, open mind, like it helps a lot of kids to like go to class, do some work, and be able to like still be themselves instead of like being like strictly stuck to doing one thing.
Thank you. Merle, I think it is in fact fitting to always let the elder or the elder to be lead us in closing in a good way.
I think as a former student and alumni of Nisga'a Elementary School, having a group of adults rallying for you in the back, it must be so empowering for the students. I know it would have been for me if I were a student and this change was happening in the back. And it makes me wish I was 40 years younger and I could go back to school again. Kabishe.
So it is our scheduled lunch break now, which we will do straight away. I would like to thank all these folks here. This is a long-term journey. You're seeing a little snapshots of a journey that's really in many ways been decades here. And it's been a great honor to be part of it. And we wanted to close the morning with this group because I hope that we all start to say, where are the kids when we come together? If they're not here, they're not here. Okay, so thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you to our guests from Nisga'a. Thank you to Peter, who incidentally came here to took a day, 2 days out of an annual family vacation in Vermont, which is supposed to be sacrosanct. Flew all the way here, got in last night just in time to be here this morning, and leaves first thing tomorrow morning. So thank you, Peter. And I hope I'm allowed to congratulate Jennifer and Sylvia on the launch of the new BC Center for Compassionate Systems Awareness. Invite you to join the workshop that Peter mentioned after lunch, but we look forward to wonderful things coming out of the center, and congratulations again. So thank you. So Peter was right, it's lunchtime, and we'd like you to think about where you're going at 1:45 when the parallel sessions begin. And for those of you who weren't here first thing this morning, we have got a makeup class in singing and playing the blues. The musicians last night weren't able to be heard. They've generously offered to come back at the end of the day. So following our closing session with Joe Clark, Rowan's Gentleman Sylvester, and the Indigenous Center for First Nations Governance, there will be a blues performance by two very special people at the end. So thank you again. Enjoy your lunch.